Hello everybody, today's video is about Penn Longcast surf reels. So every week here at Jerry's we get asked the same question. I want a new beach fishing reel, I want a fixed spool, I quite like the sound of the Penns, quite a lot of people have them, but which one should I buy? You've got four models, the Rival, Surf Blaster, Spin Fisher and a Tidle, and loads of different sizes. So we thought it'd be great if we did a video to go through the four main reels, go through the pros and cons of them, not specifically tell you what's best out of these four, which one should I spend all my money on. It's more of a case of giving you a few of the insights to the reels and then you can make your own choice to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the bottom up and go up on price. So that starts with the Rival series, which is this one. So the Rival series consists of the black and coal version, which is this, which comes in a 6000, a 7000 and 8000, all long cast. There's a black version in two sizes, and there's also a 6000 size, which is black with a little bit of blue on it, which comes in a case with two spools, which is quite specific. Some of the match anglers really like them because you get three spools and a case, so you can really look after them. And switching between lines for lots of different venues can be a big plus. But what we're going to focus on today is the best seller of the Rival range, which are the Longcast Golds. The coloration on them, obviously, with the black and a little bit of gold, they look really smart, and it sits in with a lot of Penn reels, whether the Longcast reels, spinning reels, or even if you look at a lot of the boat reels or the casting multipliers, they all have a similar sort of look to them, which is great. Suits most people's tastes. So what do you get with this? So this model here is Penn's base model for an out and out slow oscillation long cast reel. So what we say with a slow oscillation long cast reel is basically how fast the spool goes up and down and how many turns it takes as it goes up here, as you can see, and comes down. Basically, when it's moving slowly like this, it gives better line lay on the reel, which basically, when you cast, reduces friction and you cast further. So as you can see with this reel, this is got pretty good line lay. This model sits price point at just under £100. They're sometimes coming off of maybe £90, and as it stands, is a great choice to get into what I class as a proper regular use long cast reel. You still obviously can fish, you can beach fish happily with cheaper reels. You can buy £20–30 reels that will do a job. But when we're after more distance, you really need the reel to be long cast. And this is where Penn start, and obviously go up in a few different models. So that looks great. The solid handle on this, it's nice and easy to turn, nice and smooth. It's got backwind on it if you wished. It's not something many people use these days, but it is there as a feature. It's got a solid drag, so it's got a different drag system than the other three. The other three have the same, well, very similar drag system. This is just a standard drag system. So if you came to me and said, look Chris, I am going out fishing, I want a reel that's going to deal with bullhorse, smooth hounds, big rays, on a regular basis, week in, week out, I'd probably say this isn't the reel for you. The reason why I say that, the drag pressure isn't probably quite high enough to deal with the stick it's going to be given under those conditions. It's a solid drag system for your general fisherman that's just going out to enjoy himself. He's going to catch some bass, he's going to catch some flatties, he's going to catch some smooth hound and some horse and some other species that pull quite hard. No problem at all. But if you're really going to give it some grief, that might be an idea of having a look at some of the slightly more expensive models with a stronger drag. But saying that, it's a great drag and it's well priced. Less than £100, I think you get an awful lot of reel with this. So weight wise, this is the 8000 model. This comes in at just over 700 grams. It's a little bit heavier than your average reel at this price point, but it's pretty much the same with most Penn reels. They are built more so as tanks and to be hard wearing than be the lightest finesse reel on the market. I don't think that's a bad thing, but you know, some people don't like that. If you put it on a rod that weighs 450 grams and you put a 700 gram reel on it, that can make a bit of an effect. Obviously there is a 7,000 model of this which will weigh probably another 30-40 grams less. One other thing while I've got this reel out, we're just going to talk about something I also get asked about on fixed spools all the time, is the bail arm. So all these feature heavy duty solid bail arms, but they all have a manual bail arm. And what I mean by that is we often get people that click the reel open, what they want to do is turn the handle and it forces the bail arm over. Over the last maybe 6-8 years, pretty much every manufacturer of decent sized fixed spools have made these manual, so you've got to change it with your hand. The reason for this is really simple. They don't want you to send the reel back over such a tiny thing breaking. There's a little spring in here, and the way it's set up, when it's forced over in certain positions with the handle, it puts great force on the spring and it fails. And then all you do, obviously, when that's going up and down because the spring's broken, you can't fish. Ruins your session. So your reel, if you get one of these and you've never used a manual bail arm, the reel isn't broken. All you need to do after you've cast, just hold it down with your hand. I don't even think about it anymore, it's just natural. But it is a question that comes up every week with either someone on the phone, on chat, in the shop that asks the same question. So that is your rival. That's the 8,000 Longcast Gold. Sits at just under £100. An absolute solid reel for most anglers in the country. So we'll put him back over there now, and we're going to step up. So next in the range is the Penn Surf Blaster 3 Longcast. The model we're looking at here is the 8,000 size. In this, there's only one other size, which is a 7,000, which is just a little bit smaller capacity and size, and obviously weight. The 8,000 obviously is the big seller. This reel is probably the most well-known Longcast fixed spool reel ever. I remember when the original ones of these come out, maybe 2 decades ago, making me feel a bit old that. And from day one, they were some of the best-selling reels, not just us, but the whole of the UK has ever had. So this is the 3rd generation, and every generation that's stepped forward, they have built on it. And to be fair, I'd say most of the other reels that are currently in the range or have been in the range have all probably been based on some of the original designs of the Surf Blaster. So where do we sit with this? So this reel roughly sells at about £40 more than a rival. So we're looking £130, £140 roughly. They obviously fluctuate in price a little bit depending on the time of year and different seasons. So what are the differences? So first off, a really simple difference is with this you get a spare spool. This spool here holds 300 metres of 0.28mm line. So a common fill with braid is £60 braid straight through. We see it's probably the most popular size of line we sell now. So £60 braid, depending on what you're buying, will be somewhere between sort of 0.25 and 0.3mm thick. So it's going to take nearly a full spool of your braid on the standard spool, which is great for majority of your sessions. If you're going to be fishing with a lighter braid and a tapered leader, no issues, you can use a shallower spool. But there's quite a lot of people out there who want to fish a heavier mono. Say you want to fish 30-pound mono straight through that might be 0.45mm thick. Well, you're going to need the deeper spool. Also, when you've got guys going up to places like Arbroath, where they're fishing for cod in very rough conditions, they still want to fish braid, but they might fish a £100 braid. So your £100 braid again is 0.4, could be 0.5mm thick or £100. You might not get as much capacity on this as you want. So again, this comes into its own, comes included with the reel, just to give you a deeper capacity, and you can hit more venues around the country because you've got 2 spools. So I'll put that down for now. What else is different about the reel? So this reel, when you pick it up, does feel slightly heavier, sort of top end heavier than the rival, and that's because it is. This reel here sits at 455 grams. The 7,000 will be a little bit lighter, but it's 706 grams to 755 grams. So with this, we get much smoother line lay here. So we can see in comparison to the last one, as we wind, it's going to take longer to go to the top and to the bottom. Simply with this, the longer it takes to go up and down, the more horizontal your line is, less friction, and thus you'll cast further. So it will cast further than the rival. It's been tested to do so. How much further is obviously the next question. Well, that's down to the ability of the angler. If you can cast 60 yards with a rival, are you going to cast 100 yards with this? Absolutely not. If you're casting 200 yards with a rival, could you cast 230 yards with this? Potentially. It has so many variants there, but what it will do, I can guarantee, you will cast further with better line oscillation. So moving on from that, ratio wise, so retrieve ratio on all fixed spools are relatively similar at this size. You're not going to get one that's 6.1 to 1 retrieve. They just don't exist at this size of reel. So the rival's 4.3, it's a standard retrieve for any Longcast fixed spool. The Surf Blaster is a little bit faster at 4.7 to 1. Not hugely faster in the grand scheme of things, but if you are wanting to wind in quickly to get up sharp banks and keep your lead higher, worth a thought. Moving on from that, what we talked about briefly earlier was the drag system. So this features Penn's HT100 drag system. It's a very famous drag system which sits on so many of their reels. And the reason why it sits on so many of their reels is because it's so reliable. It's really strong and it lasts a long time. So if you were fishing for in the spring summer period where you're targeting smooth downs which are regularly running double figures, you can get 3 or 4 or even more decent fish in a session. What happens with a drag when it's pushed a lot is it warms up. Once it warms up, it can fatigue and it can reduce its overall strength, not just for the session but for its lifespan. With a HT100 drag system, this is a proven drag system which can deal with those higher pressures for longer and survive with a larger lifespan than a standard drag. Just as a quick note, the HT100 drag system sits both on this and the Tidle. Both models we'll go over in a little bit of detail shortly. But it is something to note that it is a fabulous drag. I just want to go back to just a few other smaller points about this before we move on. One, it's a saltwater resistant reel, so if it's getting sprayed, this and that, you don't have to worry too much. If it goes for a dip, I would always recommend giving it a full clean down, but it is saltwater resistant. Basically, the internals got a bit of a coating on them, and so is the outside. It's tightly sealed, but not waterproof. So there you have it, the Surf Blaster. I'm sure you've probably seen a few of these on the beach anyway, but it is something definitely to consider. Roughly about £140 sell at, and could be on quite a few Christmas lists this year. We're going to move on from there into the next two reels, which is what I get asked about the most, which to buy. So we're going to start with the older one, which is the Spinfisher. So the Spinfishers, this is actually in a Longcast form. This is the 3rd generation. In terms of a Spinfisher reel, they've been around since like the 60s, the design concepts and stuff. But in actual Longcast, for what we're talking about today, this is the 3rd generation, but it's called a VII, or Series 7 is the easiest way to say it. So the model we're looking at here is a Spinfisher 7500 Longcast. This comes in 3 sizes. First is a 5500 Longcast, which is good for lighter rods, maybe a bass rod, or you want to put a durable reel on it that's got slow oscillation. They're very handy for that. There's a 6500, which I think is probably the most balanced in terms of weight and size ratio of the range. And then the most popular one, which is the 7500, which is the biggest. And obviously in today's world, the bigger the better. Everyone sort of goes by that premise these days. So what do we get with the Spinfisher? My favourite part about this reel, and the reason why I have 3 different models of these, is because it is fully waterproof. To put it into context, this has the same waterproof rating as the top of the range iPhone. So you could drop it a few metres down in the water, leave it there for quite a long time, get it out, the internals will be dry. That obviously sounds brilliant. There's no water getting in my reel, which is true. There's no water, no salt water getting in the reel, so it's not going to corrode. But the thing I really like about it is not just the salt water not getting in, it's all the grit, it's all the sand that builds up in your gears, that churns away, and over years, it just destroys your gears. And more often than not, when the reel fails, it's when it's under extreme load. When you've got that fish of a lifetime on, or that new PB, that's when your reel's going to fail. With this being fully waterproof, all of those things we talked about aren't going to happen. This is why, to be honest, out of all the reels, this is personally my favourite, but it does have a few drawbacks against the other ones. So let's go through some other specs on the reel. Drag system, HT100 drag system. It actually has a slightly higher max drag capacity or rating than the Surf Blaster. Obviously we've gone through the drag system, the pressures and how good it is. We don't need to sort of cover that again. The spool itself has a slightly different design. So this spool is much deeper. So it takes absolute tons of line, sort of capacity wise, 0.36 mil, which is like, let's say 80 pound-ish braid, of a decent braid, 444 metres, or with mono it took 30 pound, 590 yards. So any situation you've got in the UK, this should have enough capacity for you. We sell a lot of these for gents going up to the western side of Scotland, targeting common skate, and they've been proven time and time again with this generation and the previous generation to be strong enough to deal with these monsters of the deep, 150, 200 pound fish. The one failing we have had with the spin fisher, with returns from catching such extreme size fish, isn't necessarily a failing of the reel, but I'd like to explain it while we're here talking about fishing for common skate. So with any Longcast reel that we've looked at already, when we wind the reel, it takes a long time to go to the top. Once it's at the top, it's probably its weakest point that this reel can be at, especially under high load. So the spindles at the highest point, and the spool sat at the highest point away from the rest of the reel as it can be. If we put the reel under extreme load here, with a massive fish not wanting to come up, what's going to happen is, just because it's on the end of that spindle, if it's going to bend the spindle, it's at this point which the spindle will bend. This is exactly the same for any Longcast reel on the market, or as it ever has been on the market. The reel simply isn't quite designed to take incredible amounts of pressure at this high point. So we have had returns of this with slightly bent spindles. It will ruin your fishing session if you ever bend the spindle on one of these. You could do it on a 50 pound reel on there, trying to pull out of a snag. If the reel's high up like this, you are likely to probably bend the spindle under high load. All I'd recommend to do is, when you've got a big fish on, you tighten down to the reel. Generally it's going to have a bit of run of line first. If you're going to put a lot of heave into the rod, make sure the spool is at its lower position. Then you'll never ever bend your spindle. You'll never have to return the reel for that problem. This, again, isn't a design failing. It's more almost of a slight user error in this part, but it's something that comes up occasionally when we talk about catching extreme sizes of fish off the shore, whether the taupe, big stingray or common skate. So in terms of negatives to this reel, this is the heaviest of the 3. This is 790 grams. It's not something personally bothers me too much. You know, we're talking maybe 12% heavier than the rival at the same size, and against the Surf Blaster, maybe another sort of nearly 40 grams heavier. But when you're beach fishing, your rod is in the tripod for 90% of the time. When you're putting this on a big rod, your rod might be 700 grams, maybe 800 grams. You're not completely outbalancing it. They don't completely overweigh them. if you're fishing with a lighter rod, completely different thought. That way, if you're fishing with a, say, an old Vercelli Continental beach rod, which will throw a 5-6 ounce lead, but weighs 400 to 500 grams, this will feel a bit unbalanced on a rod. But it probably isn't the reel you'd pick to go on that, because you're not going to need some of the features of this reel to put on such a finesse rod. So that's your Penn spin fisher. Ratio wise, bringing it in, we are on 4.3 to 1, so you just bang average in the middle. Does not come with a spare spool. You can buy the spare spools, but they are quite expensive. But with the capacity, what we see is most people will put a braid on of say 70-80 pounds. It should really cover you for most areas of the country. It's got the manual bail line that we talked about before. It's got the anti-reverse if you wish to use it. And the other thing which this reel does have, and the Surf Blaster and this does, is the strengthened handle system. So something that people don't quite understand. But when you get a reel that you just unwind like that to loosen the handle off for storage, it's actually much stronger than the traditional ones, where it comes through and undoes here to tighten it or untighten it. When the candles are like this, they've been proven under test to be much stronger. So when you are targeting bigger species and you're really cranking down, small little design features like this that you're probably unaware of will aid you massively in the longevity of the reel, and thus, as we talked about before, the reel generally fails on that bigger fish rather than just when you're winding in. It shouldn't happen at all with a handle. Any other questions about this, please get in contact. Like I said, I've got a few of these myself and I can bore you to death with them. Would I say it's my favourite? Yes, I would. Would I say it's for everybody? No, I wouldn't. I'm not trying to say you should all buy these, because different reels suit different people. So we're going to move on to the final reel, and it is the newest of the Penn Longcast beach range, which is the Tidle XT. This has definitely been the best seller for the last 12 months since it's been released. I think mainly for one, because it's completely different to any other Penn reel on the market. Penn have taken for years feedback on their reels and listened and tried to improve what they do. And this is probably the biggest change I've seen in a Penn reel, I'd probably say ever, or certainly probably since when the original 525 got made with Neil McKellar, where they completely redesigned it. But that's a completely different story. So, biggest complaint about any Penn reel, speak to anyone on the market, they're a little bit too heavy and clunky. Some people want something lighter. If you look at Daiwas, look at Shimano's, you look at Akios reels, they're all lighter reels. When you pick them up, they feel generally better than some of these Penn reels. But generally they don't have the same durability and tank-like strength that you get with a Penn, which has obviously made them so strong. What Penn's done with the Tidle XT is they've made a reel which is still strong. It's got the same HT100 drag system as these two models, albeit it's not quite as high as drag pressure as a spin fisher, but more than happy to deal with your hush, your hounds, your rays, etc. No problems at all with that. But it's much lighter. This is a 7000 model, so there's an 8000 model in this range as well. The 7000 model in this weighs 495 grams. The spin fisher, which is the heaviest reel we've looked at, is 790. So just to pick up and feel, you're like, oh, that's lovely. In comparison to this. Again, it is in your tripod 90% of the time, but people do like a lighter reel. Technically, with your cast, if it's lighter, you'll probably be able to move through your cast slightly quicker. So maybe cast a bit further. Will it make too much difference on overall distance? Marginal. So let's go through all the bits on this reel. So line lay, very similar to the spin fisher in terms of overall speed. Long time up, long time down. The drag system here is the HT100 drag, which we just mentioned. But the big difference between the two drags is this is a quick drag, and this is the thing that I love on all my fixed bore reels. So let's put why is a quick drag better than a standard drag? Simply, when you're playing a decent fish, the ability to be able to adjust the spool just fractionally to allow a big fish to run with giving it enough flat line but not too much can mean losing or catching a fish. So to put it into context, that's full drag, that's really tight, that's not moving at all. Half a turn, drag's moving quite freely. Full turn round, we are really slack. Obviously we're never going to be like that fishing off the beach. But what it does is, say you've got your drag set reasonably tight and you've been catching some dogfish all day, and all of a sudden rod bill bends double over, your drag is on too tight and there's something big screaming away. Literally a few clicks will give it just enough line to take off without being silly. I think we've all been in that situation where we've struck into a fish, got excited, and we've gone, oh, twist the drag too much line goes off, goes slack. We don't want to tell anyone what we've done, but we've all been guilty of it at some point in our angling lifetime. So that itself is just a handy little feature. Probably stop you losing an occasional decent fish. Will it catch you loads more fish? No, but it's just a convenience of it. And then if we feel the reel itself, it's actually a little bit smoother than any of these reels and a little bit lighter to wind. In terms of durability, which is the question, well, all Penns are built heavy and more durable so they last. How's this got on? So we've sold, I don't know how many hundreds of these in the two sizes over the last 12 months. I think I've seen 3 back. We've probably had a few more back, but in comparison, that's very, very good odds for the hundreds and hundreds we've sold. Some come back from user error, some come back from random failures. You always get occasional Friday night railers, we call them here, that have escaped the production line when QC control maybe wasn't looking. But you get that in every single brand at every quality point. Other features, we've got the anti-reverse like everything else. Retrieve on this is slightly better. This is a 4.8 to 1, so your retrieve is slightly quicker on this. So you guys ask me now, what's the price point? Price point on this, roughly £170. Obviously they vary, we're talking winter 2024 prices. If you're looking at this video in a year or two, might be a little bit more expensive. In comparison to this is about the same money as well, but hopefully, as you can understand between the two, they have slightly different design concepts, but do cross over an awful lot for your average angler. The choice is yours really with those two. The other little bits of bonuses for this, it has spool reducers, so you don't have to put as much backing on. It also comes with a spare spool, which the Spinfisher doesn't, the Surf Blaster does, and the Rival doesn't. So there you go. I hope I've been quite helpful in just explaining the differences between the 4 reels. And if you have any further questions, want to have a go at some of the reels, if you're local to the store, you can pop in and have a cast on the beach in front of the store. But yeah, just get in contact, and I hope I've been a help.